Welcome into another episode of Popcorn for Breakfast. Today we're providing a spoiler-free review of the movie Warfare, which releases in theaters this weekend and is co-directed by real Navy SEAL and Iraq War veteran Ray Mendoza, as well as visionary writer-director Alex Garland. This movie features a cast that is riddled with up-and-coming stars in the Hollywood ranks, and we have a lot to get into, so let's get into it right now.
Is Popcorn for Breakfast, presented by St. Louis Area Smoothie Kings. Now, here are your hosts, Cam and Kirk.
Thank you so much for being here on another episode of Popcorn for Breakfast. You'll notice we got a little bit of a low-tech setup today. Kirk could not join us for this review, which is a very, very rare occurrence, but he has a performance coming up this weekend, and he's practicing away at that. So we're kicking it old school. We're ditching the fancy 3-camera setup and going, I don't know, what would you call this, Stefano? Like Zoom meeting motif here?
I think Zoom meeting is appropriate, at least for myself over here.
Yeah. So we're kicking it old school. You'll have to bear with us as we go a little bit more lo-fi this week, but excited that Stefano could be here to join us once again, filling in for Kirk. Before I realized we couldn't do the 3-camera thing, I was going to put some sort of funny cardboard cutout or like a stuffed animal or something in Kirk's seat, but alas, here we are just in a lonely, empty studio. But I'm really excited, Stefano, because you and I were just in the movie theater together less than an hour ago, actually, watching a film that really, I think, has kind of probably snuck up on a lot of people on this year's film slate, and that's Warfare, directed by Alex Garland, who's an Academy Award-nominated writer and director of many iconic films, including 28 Days. Danny Boyle directed 28 Days Later, but he wrote 28 Days Later. He directed Ex Machina. He directed most recently Civil War last year. And then the movie is co-written and directed by Ray Mendoza, who has been around Hollywood for a while, working on a lot of high-profile projects, most recently The Terminal List for Prime Video. But he's also a real-life Navy SEAL and Iraq War veteran. And this movie dives into considered one of the bloodiest battles in the Iraq War, the Battle of Ramadi. And Ray Mendoza, as a Navy SEAL, was there in the battle, and partially this movie takes place. It's built around his memories as well as the memories of those in his platoon. So that's kind of the setup here, Stefano. What was your initial take whenever this came across the ticker?
Yeah, first I was a bit stunned because I think we found out this movie existed after Civil War already came out or was kind of in the midst of all of that. So it was shocking that because, Alex Garland, especially with him being part of the project, if you look back at, Ex Machina was technically his directorial debut, and then he's only directed a few others. So to see him, quickly, punch out a couple movies was shocking to me, but I was excited because it, clearly he's in that war mindset. So I was interested to see what his take would be on this, because it's definitely a completely different type of movie with, something else to say, definitely.
Yeah, you think of Alex Garland, you think, I don't know, you think of somebody with a very specific creative vision. You think of somebody who kind of dwells in the realm of sci-fi, surrealism, a little bit of horror here and there. Just somebody who really kind of, those are the things that come to mind. And I think that with Civil War was the first time that really started to shift for me. And then you've got this, which feels like a very natural follow-up to Civil War, as you were saying. And I think war films in general are tricky. Just kind of as a rule, I think there's a lot of preconceived notions about war films. And so it's obvious that with this project, they were trying to do something very different. So I think we'll get into whether or not they accomplished that in a spoiler-free way. So you ready to dive in?
Let's do it.
Okay. So for those of you who are new to the program, first of all, welcome, and sorry for our lower than high quality setup here. You can go back and watch previous episodes to see how we usually are, but we're going to get through it today. Really interesting movie to talk about here, but we've got 5 categories we're going to get into. The first one is And the Oscar Goes To, which, as you would guess, goes to the best actor in the film. The next category is scene stealer for that sort of like under the radar, unsung performance. Then we've got showstopper, which is the best part of the film, in our opinion. Director's shoes, which is the things we would tweak if we were in the director's chair. And last looks, where we'll give our final wrap up and score. We're going to keep it spoiler free for you today. Let's get into it. Now, Stefano, I know a lot of times we let you go first, and you sometimes have a bone to pick with that. So I'll tell you what, it's dealer's choice today. You can either go first or you cannot. I will just pass it over to you.
I'll go second and on all of them.
Okay.
Let's,
Okay.
let's see
Pressure's on.
let's see where we go from here.
Okay, so let's start with and the Oscar goes to, and I get the first crack at this, which I'm thankful for. So if you're new to the program, we do schoolyard pick style, so you can't repeat picks. That way we get to cover more areas of the film. For my Oscar, I'm going with an actor who I really feel like is showing himself to be one of the more versatile young actors that's currently on the scene, and that's going to be Will Poulter. Will Poulter, who is he's referred to by many names in this film. I don't know if he's ever referred to by his first name, but he's referred to as Cowboy as well as Alpha One, and he's sort of the platoon lead of this Navy SEAL troop. I believe it's like SEAL Team 5, but they're split into factions for this operation. And so he's in a leadership role on this operation. And man, Will Poulter, I really admire actors like him who have so much range and so much versatility. I mean, I was just a couple weeks ago watching and then writing a blog about Death of a Unicorn, in which he plays something that is such a far cry from this. You've got this character in that movie who's like stricken with affluenza. He's like a nepo baby. Like he's like the heir to a pharmaceutical throne, and he's doing drugs and just being crazy throughout that whole movie. And then you've got him here where he's this stoic, very on point kind of leadership type role in a Navy SEAL platoon. And I thought he was phenomenal in this role. His character is really with us wire to wire in this film as other people kind of come and go throughout the course of this operation. And he goes through every aspect of warfare that you could imagine, the highs, the lows, and everything in between. And I think that a big part of what this movie was really striving to show is the humanity of these people who are in these combat situations and how harrowing it is, trying to give as realistic a take as they possibly could. And Will Poulter's character is central to that theme and that desire for them to get that through. He delivers some really poignant moments, some really thought-provoking moments. He has a lot of commentary, like thematic commentary through his dialogue, and I just thought he knocked it out of the park.
Yep, and I'm sure you saw my wince when you said that, because to me it's a great cast, but probably the most obvious choice here. Couldn't agree more. I also recently saw Death of a Unicorn and had a lot of praise for his performance in that.
Yes,
he's something else. I know some people will still refer to him as the Sid the Sloth looking kid from We're the Millers or whatever that movie was, but he has come a long way, and he was incredible in this. And I think we'll probably get into it a bit later, but seeing how certain characters' outlook on things shifts throughout an hour and a half of war and movie really came to the forefront, seeing how he went through all those things. So
yeah,
he definitely knocked it out of the park. He was amazing.
awesome.
All
Yeah,
right. So for my pick, which I'm also very excited to talk about, Cosmo Jarvis, who
sweet.
plays Elliot in this. And for those of you that have most recently seen the show Shogun, he gives an amazing performance in that as well. And I think what impressed me so much about Cosmo's performance was, obviously everyone does a lot of good physical work in this, but for the first, I don't know, 15 to 20 minutes of the movie, Cosmo is in a stable position looking out of his sniper scope. He's sweating, he's talking, he's doing all this and staying as still as he can. And there was so much that he was able to convey with his face, with the wrinkles in his forehead, with his dialogue. And it was really, really impressed by his performance. And, there are moments of levity in the movie a few, but there are, and some of them come through because his confidence and the way he handles situations, and really can see a full gamut of emotions from his character as well. So I really love Cosmo's performance. Very physical, subtle in ways, but he was a real huge core of the movie. And I know the character he plays, Elliot, was one of the main dedications of the movie that Ray wanted to attach to it. So definitely a special character and a really good performance.
Yeah, it's a great call out, man. And it didn't even click for me right away that that was him, like having watched Shogun and having really loved his
Hmm.
performance in that. Um, and when it did, I knew I was in for a ride, and that he was going to provide a really good performance, which he did. So it's an excellent pick. All right, let's move on to Scene Stealer. This cast is absolutely humongous, and there's tons of names in here that are buried down the cast list that as you scroll through it, you're like, oh, really? They were in it? Because you've got a lot of people whose faces are obscured by helmets or bandanas or whatever war gear, tactical gear they have on. Um, but one person who made his presence felt absolutely immediately is my Scene Stealer, and that's Charles Melton. Charles Melton, who really, I think, burst onto the scene with his performance in May, December. That was when everybody started to really be like, holy smokes, this guy has the total package when it comes to acting. He totally understood that film and committed to it at a very high level. And just kind of jumped off the screen. In this movie, I feel like he jumps off the screen too. And you spoke about physicality when it came to Cosmo, and I think that Charles Melton's character's physicality, he's doing different things than what Cosmo's doing, but he's doing a lot of heavy lifting in the combat and tactical scenes. And just the there's a sort of, his character really doesn't say that much. He doesn't
Mhm.
convey that much through dialogue, but he conveys so much through his emotions and through his eyes in speaking with the soldiers who he's working with and trying to get out alive. And he's just really understanding the gravity of the situation and being empathetic and just pouring out all these things without saying a word. And I thought that that was extremely impressive. And I continue to think that he's really going to make a huge name for himself in this industry. And this is another confident step in that direction. So kudos to Charles Melton, my Scene Stealer.
For sure. Loved his performance as well. He's such a big physical presence, pretty tall, wide shoulders, and he just like commands the screen. Absolutely. And we see him at the beginning and he trails off for a bit. And I was like, well,
Yes.
I need some more Charles Melton. And we definitely got it. So that was good.
Yeah, for sure. And where are you going with your Scene Stealer?
All right. I am going with the person who plays Ray Mendoza. I'm going to go with DeFaro Wunatai. And it's an actor that is completely new to me. And I didn't, know what to expect from this because, I knew going into it, you know, DeFaro is playing Ray Mendoza. So it's got to be somebody Ray trusts, that Alex Garland trusts, and that is going to carry a huge portion of the movie. And he really does because he is kind of the one person that links, at a point in time in the movie, we kind of have two separate groups that are communicating back and forth as much as they can. And he is kind of that main line of communication. Seems to be that person. You have Will Poulter who's kind of running the show, but then you have Ray's character in this movie who is kind of that person everybody falls back onto to ask a question, to talk to. If you need medical help, he feels like he's there. And his confidence in his performance and his just the way he handles different situations in the movie and how he knows how to pivot in his performance in this was really impressive. And I didn't really see this coming. So I was really impressed by this performance, especially with so much weight into this going into this character.
I 100% agree. I was floored, and I'm so glad you called it out because I think you know, there's so much going on in this movie, and I think it's a factor of kind of the approach that they took with the movie that there's just not typical character dynamics throughout this movie, and so they're usually you kind of edit in such a way or write in such a way that certain characters pop here and there, and I felt like his character didn't necessarily get those big chances, but still took advantage of every single moment that he had in his performance, and really is one of the characters that leaves a really lasting impact on you whenever credits roll on this movie. So great call out for sure. All right. Now we're getting into the technical details. This is like we said, it's a war film, it's a drama. Um, from a technical perspective, there's a lot to sink your teeth into. So I'm excited that we get to do so. Let's start with Showstopper. I'll keep the gravy train rolling since I'm still running point here. My Showstopper is the style of the film and the commitment to the style. I would describe this film as hyper realism. Okay, so you've got drama, so that's like a stair step. You've got drama, and then you've got realism as sort of the sub style there. And then this I would put in hyper realism. And there's many ways in which they choose to lean into that. And the biggest one, um, really, there's no music in the movie, so that's one that sticks out to me in a major way. There's no score underneath it. There are songs at the beginning and the end to kind of dovetail it. There's also a crazy scene right at the beginning to sort of set the stage and give you that first big shock of the movie. But really, from the moment it starts, you get I don't know if the appropriate term is like Chiron text, but you get text on screen that just says November 19th, 2006, Ramadi, Iraq. Marines are setting up Navy SEALs are setting up sniper locations to support a Marine operation. This movie was built with just the memories of those people there. And that's it. From that point forward, they are locked into hyper realism, and they're 100% committed to suspending your disbelief and making you feel like you were there. So some of the ways that they do this is they don't put any more text on screen for the movie at all. Even when it would have maybe been helpful to identify this is this person and this is that person, they stuck to their guns and they made sure that they were sticking to making this feel as real, almost documentary style filmmaking through and through. They also shot this movie chronologically, and what I mean by that is that each scene was shot in the order in which it plays in the film. So that is something that is extraordinarily rare in modern filmmaking because of the complexity of it. So if you think about it, like this movie takes place in a very small number of locations. You've got interior locations and exterior locations, but it all takes place in the same like general area. But typically when you film a movie, you would do, hey, if we have a few shots that are set up against this wall, we're going to leave the lighting set up and we're going to run through each scene. Not in this case. So you're talking about, from a level of complexity standpoint, you're having to redo lighting setups, recompare all of that to make sure that whenever you edit it together, it feels like one cohesive piece. And you're having to deal with weather and natural lighting and all these things. It's extremely difficult from a filmmaking point, but it benefits the movie in such a real way because it allowed them to let the story unfold in real time. So that's a big core component of this movie, is that the movie's like an hour and 35 minutes. And once you get into the combat situation, it unfolds in the actual timing that the event unfolded according to the memory of the men who were there. And so the lengths that they went to commit to this hyper realism, to allow it to unfold in real time, it also gives you less forgiveness in the edit too, right? Like you have to leave those scenes in. You can't scrap stuff. So you have to get a good take with good lighting. There's just very, very, very little room for error, and it requires everybody on set and in the cast and crew to be absolutely on point. But I felt it benefited the story so much. So the commitment to hyper realism, that's my showstopper, hands down.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with all your points. And I know we were just talking about some of the emotional progressions from the characters and the actors are just that much more authentic because they filmed
Yes.
chronologically, and you feel like obviously they lived some of this themselves. I know I saw a tidbit that a group of the actors got matching tattoos because of the brotherhood they felt in the movie. Obviously, they were on a safe movie set, and it was nothing like what the actual soldiers went through. But just building that and building such an authentic filming experience that's awesome.
Yeah, and
So
it just gets the actors so much more involved in the story, I think. Because they can feel each piece as it unfolds, and they really are just kind of like living it in real time together. So yeah, it's a really sharp artistic choice here.
totally. All right. For mine, I was going to go with something similar. I think I'm going to go something that's kind of in parallel with that. And it's basically the stakes and the story that Alex Garland and Ray decided. Obviously, this is Ray's story to tell, but the fact that this is the scope and story that Alex Garland also bought into to tell, because yes, it's one of, this area and this part of the war was one of the bloodiest for sure, but it also feels like it's telling us the story about the horrors of war in a way where it seems like it's just kind of an everyday occurrence in this type of war where they're just kind of surveilling a building, right? Like there is no end game. There is, we're just going to be in this building and we have to just try to survive and see if everything's okay. So we go through an hour and a half of, everything that happens, and it's just like, oh, this is just what a day in the life of this war was, with all the horror that happened. We see a perspective of, the civilians that live there too, which I think was also a really nice touch, and I wanted to add that to like the scale of it, of the story, because yes, it's telling the story of the soldiers, but then also it shows the real life impact of the people living there that aren't involved in the war at all. Obviously, you have, two sides of the coin, and then you have a family whose house they had to overtake to set up their surveillance camp. So, and I think that, some people might find what you said, the structure of the film frustrating, or the scale and the stakes in the film frustrating, because you kind of want in a movie you want a beginning, middle, and end, and here we have a slice of life, but a slice of life in the middle of a war, which is pretty rare, but it made for some really compelling um, movie. So yeah, I'll say like the scale of it, and I also agree with you with how it was made and the structure of it.
Yeah, I just think like, you know, they have sort of marketed this as a different take on a war film. And I feel like this is exactly that. And I think that we're so conditioned to expect certain things from war films. And I think there are lots of reasons for that. I think like I had always heard, and I don't know if this is true or if it's still true or whatever, that like if you wanted to make a war film or any kind of film that used United States military ranks and vernacular and all and insignia and all that stuff, like you had to work with the Department of Defense, you had to work with the DoD to get approval on everything that's in that film. And so like, you think about like Iron Man and they use like Lieutenant Colonel Rhodes, like all of those things are meant or have to go through the DoD. And so we're used to getting, for better or worse, I mean, you be the judge, a much more like propagandized form of a military film. And this really wasn't that, to your point. Like they it's not anti-military at all. It's actually pro-military, but it is staunchly anti-war, and it's really just kind of laying it bare for you to judge. It doesn't take a specific position per se,
Mhm.
but it really makes sure that you see, this conflict through every possible lens available, that you're given all the information that you need to make your own judgment on it. And that's something that's really thought provoking and frankly just really compelling. So, mission accomplished on that front for
For
sure.
sure, definitely.
Okay, let's get into the other side of the film and talk about director shoes or things we didn't like. Again, I mean, I think I, I don't have a lot of specific criticisms for the film other than to say like because of that commitment to style, you do sacrifice some things on the filmmaking side, which I think, or the storytelling side, which I think you were kind of alluding to there, which is like it will frustrate some people in that you get a little bit less character depth. That was something for me that was difficult. Is like you've got all these different characters coming in and out, and the normal character dynamics that you come to expect in a story just don't really exist because I think it's that uh really stubborn commitment to like we have these memories from real people that we are piecing together. So like if this character is involved in people's memories from the first part of the conflict but not in the second, like he's gone, right? Like he's just not
Right.
going to get as much screen time, he's not going to get as much airtime. And so there is this sort of like wonkiness with the storytelling, and I think they smoothed it out as much as humanly possible, but there's just if you're going to commit in that way, you're going to have those things, which I think from an artistic standpoint is admirable, but I think from an entertainment value standpoint can be challenging. So it's sort of that that tug of war that we always sort of see in filmmaking between making things entertaining and committing to the artistic values of the film and finding that balance. So it's not a huge nitpick, but it is something that as you watch it, you'll be like, you know, the way that these characters come and go, maybe not in terms of physical presence, but in terms of their involvement in the story, can be uh, a little bit frustrating or throw you off balance, and the way certain scenes progress. So I think on one side of the coin, the commitment is my favorite thing about the movie. On the other side of
Mhm.
the coin, you could say, hey, it kind of hinders this movie at times. And I think you'd be right on both accounts, but it certainly just makes it more interesting to analyze.
For sure. And going on that, what I was gonna say in our afterthoughts was something I really did appreciate about it that kind of goes with that line of thinking is I really appreciated that there wasn't, because clearly he didn't want to turn it into something melodramatic or something propagandistic. So what we don't get is like we don't know if what people's situations are outside of this. We don't know if they have a kid at home, and we don't have that type of aspect to it, which I was grateful for because of how the movie plays out and starts out. Because I don't want those things kind of shoehorned in to kind of cheapen it, because obviously that's his goal, right? It was the hyper realism. So I appreciated that, and you know, man, war films can always have a lot of that cheesy dialogue and all of
Yes,
that, and I really appreciated that there was none of that here.
no doubt.
So for my, I guess, nitpick, I would call it is, and something wanted to call out positive is how phenomenal the sound was. We were able to see it in
Oh yeah.
IMAX, and it was. I think you remember that there was a loud noise about a third of the way in that I didn't expect, and I was about 7 inches out of my seat. I was
I think
just
everybody was.
good grief, but it sounded amazing. But going with that, the one nitpick I have is a lot of the movie is heard through like walkie-talkie type situations where our comms guy Ray is talking to somebody else and you're getting all this information. So on top of the terms and acronyms that they're using that are so hyper realistic that you may have trouble understanding, a lot of it is understood through context, which is completely fine, but some of it is hard to hear. And yes, it is so realistic because they don't have these amazing speakers or headphones or whatever. They're in the middle of the desert in 2006, right? This is probably what it sounded like. But I will say, maybe subtitling the comms or something like that would be helpful to the audience. So that was my one nitpick. I don't think I missed anything from it, but it's something again that could increase the enjoyment of the movie for some folks.
Yeah, I like that one because I'm the kind of person where, and I think a lot of people are like this. Like when you watch a movie, you're constantly trying to get your bearings, right? You want to make sure like I'm fully understanding everything that's going on. And this movie through that and through just all of it leaves you kind of on your heels a little bit the whole time where you're like, okay, I think I'm grasping, but I missed some bits here, I missed some bits
Mhm.
there. And so yeah, I agree with that. I think it was a choice, but it's one that you're like, I could have done with some of that. So good call out. All right, let's wrap up Warfare. I'll give my last looks. Listen, I think if you look at the year of 2025, there's no doubt this is one of the most interesting movies of the year so far. I realize that's not saying much, but I do think that, again, if your goal as Alex Garland and Ray Mendoza is to kind of shift the paradigm on war films and to deliver something that's different than what people are expecting, mission accomplished. And I think that that's really admirable because of their artistic commitment and the way that they really locked in and didn't waver on their approach to this film. And I think that, I'm somebody who tends to enjoy the sort of like typical war film as well, the sort of like dad film or even like the Amazon Prime shows like The Terminal List or Jack Ryan or things like that. Like that is my guilty pleasure. Those are things that I enjoy. But I loved how thought provoking this was, and how it made you go, okay, like it's fun to kind of get caught up in the like machismo, like macho man, like war film. That is something that just kind of appeals to certain people, and I am one of those people. It's fun to hear all the like cool terminology and to see the the night vision and listen to the radio chatter. There's just like something, I don't know, it has a cool factor to it that you factor in, but this movie really kind of challenged me on that. It pushed me to say like, okay, like what am I actually celebrating whenever I feel good about a war movie? What am I actually feeling? And is that okay? Should I be thinking more about these things? And I think that in general, as a culture, we certainly in America have become largely desensitized to violent conflicts and things like that through, things like Call of Duty. I've logged a ton of hours in Call of Duty. I've participated in every aspect of that kind of segment of culture. But this really challenged me to take a step back and say like, okay, how do I feel about that now? And I love a movie that can make you stop and think, particularly one that's flipping a genre on its head like this. I think there are some from a strictly film watching standpoint, there are things that can make this a difficult watch at times, but overall, I think the achievement is extraordinary, and it's certainly one of my favorite movies of the year so far, and one that I'm glad lived up to. Like this is one I was looking forward to, and it lived up to my hype in ways that I wasn't really expecting. So I'm giving it 8.7 out of 10 kernels.
Awesome. Great thoughts. I agree with a lot of what you said, and it made it an interesting and a kind of a white knuckle experience too, because going in that there are going to be some tragic events that take place. We wouldn't be making this movie if nothing happened. So you're kind of looking over your shoulder a bit, trying to see like when something might happen, who might you lose, what's going to happen, and I think as different as it is compared to other war movies, it still has that thrilling element that somebody who appreciates other war movies or action movies, would enjoy in this as well. And I think they did a really good job with the cast as well, because you have some heartthrobs in it. And it's a good way of, especially bringing in maybe a Gen Z audience or what have you. You have Joseph Quinn of Stranger Things fame and A Quiet Place fame, and kind of bringing those actors into this world seems crazy. I know Noah Centineo's in this, I guess, for a second as well. So I really appreciate that. And, as horrible as it may seem, you kind of need this war is the worst thing on the planet type movie every decade or so. We haven't had something so realistic and something so, I don't want to use the word horrific, but there is some imagery in it that makes it one of the more gruesome war movies I've ever seen, and, it's not just for the sake of it. It's to tell this full story and to, show the impact of it. So I was blown away by the realism. Like I said, the sound was amazing. There were really good choices of, like dulling sound out to, show the effects it had on some of the soldiers. And, I'm sure they're still feeling those effects now, and how we're hearing things. And some of the movie can be overstimulating too. And it's like, there's so many sounds going on, so much happening, but imagine what these people were going through. So I love it for all those reasons. Obviously, like you said, it's not the most accessible for everybody, but I am really high on it, liked it a lot, and I'm going to recommend it to everybody who's interested in it. Going to send it into the group chat here soon, probably to some friends, tell them to check it out this weekend. Very close score. I wrote it down already, so I'm not cheating off of you. I have it at an 8.9.
Nice.
Kernels.
Almost into the 9 territory, which is hallowed ground, but
it could change. Maybe I'll bump it up if the rest of the year is not good. Who knows?
Yeah. It's a sliding scale, and I think
for sure,
you have to be willing to be fluid with your ratings as you change and as your tastes change and as you get more information about movies. I think people think that like, and I know it's a lot of pressure as a critic to like commit to a score, and then you feel like, oh no, I don't feel that way about the movie anymore. But we're keeping it low pressure here. We'll just we'll see how we feel the next time we view it. But truly a great movie. Anytime you're in the high 8s on this podcast, I feel like that means that we think it's a great film. It's one you should absolutely check out. If you get a chance to check it out in IMAX, I know it's going to be fighting for screens this weekend with some films, it frankly should not be fighting for screens for. I don't know. Is Minecraft in IMAX?
I don't know. I looked. I don't think it is, but I know I mentioned to you the Amateur apparently is in IMAX, or it's
Yeah,
not, and they're just showing it in IMAX screens. Who knows? But
yeah, and I mean, I can't really comment on the Amateur because we didn't get a screening of it, and I plan to watch it, but I mean, this would be the one that I would rather see in IMAX, just given the scale of it. And I'm glad Minecraft is bringing tons of people to the movie theaters. I haven't got a chance to see it though. My boys are like beating me up about it. They're like, "Please take me to go see the Minecraft movie."
it
Mind you,
sounds like you need to go take them at like 11 a.m. on a Tuesday, so
right?
they don't get attacked
Dude,
with popcorn.
the videos from the theaters are absolute mania. And I got a disgusting film notification earlier that somebody brought a live chicken
Yeah,
into a screening
yeah,
of Minecraft. So, hey, you know what? I'm at the point with cinema where I'm like, whatever it
yeah.
takes.
Go for it.
Truly, like, if we're gonna break box office records, I don't care. I'll bring a chicken. I like.
Right.
I'm whatever it takes. So Stefano, thanks so much for being here, man. It was great to catch up and get to watch this movie together. Thank you all for watching this episode. As a reminder, Kirk will be back soon. We've had kind of a helter skelter schedule recently, so we've been a little bit slower on the review episodes and things like that, but we're going to be getting back to movie news and reviews like we always do very soon as things start to ramp up here in the year of 2025. But as always, you can always check out our website, popcorn the number 4 breakfast.com. There's great blogs on there from Stefano as well as myself and Kirk about recent films. If you're looking for something to watch on streaming, head over to our website, type in the name of the film in the search bar. Chances are you'll find our opinions on it if it has released in the last 5 years or so that we started this podcast. So feel free to do that, or reach out in our free Discord server. You can find the link to join in the description below. We'd love to have you in there chatting movies with us, or just being a casual creep, I guess, just lurking and watching the movie recommendations flow in. Whatever way you want to reach out, we'll be glad to chat with you about Warfare or any other movie that you're interested in. So thank you so much for watching and listening. We want to give a special thanks to our title sponsor, St. Louis Area Smoothie Kings, as well as our executive producer, Ryan, and the band Rhetoric, who created our original music. Thanks again. We hope you have a great week, and we will see you next time.